Right, welcome back to the Dope Stroke Show podcast. I believe we are into episode 5 now in season 2. It's going well, boys. We've got the trio, as always, myself, Chris Ryan, we've got Chris Trott over in San Diego, and then we've got Dazzler, who is, I want to say Redding? No, Woking.
Well, Bracknell, I suppose, so pretty close to Ascot, if you know where in the world that might be. Probably
England.
not.
We'll go England.
We'll go England, yeah, that's easy.
So, what we're going to talk about this week? Well, basically, the 3 people that you're listening to here have got a little bit of experience when it comes to golf. We maybe don't play as much now as we used to before, but we all got to a pretty decent level. We could all hold our own, and we all got to the point where we could turn pro, which over in the UK, that means a handicap of 4 or less, but I know that we were all a little bit better than that. So I wanted to talk this week about what we felt that we all did from the kind of moment that we picked up a golf club until that point where we could turn pro. So basically giving you a blueprint that you can follow if you want to be the best golfer that you can be. Because yes, we all want these quick fixes that are going to help you play better tomorrow. But most people that I deal with who love this game, who are obsessed with this game, are in it for the long run. They want to play it for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years. So we're going to give you some insights as to how you can get better. So in 50 years' time, you are one hell of a better player than you are today. That's our goal. But before we do that, I believe that Dazzler has some exciting news and an announcement.
Yep, I certainly do. It's a very exciting week for us at the moment. In fact, I'm a little bit hungover just from the actual stuff that happened yesterday related to it. But alongside me running Rocket Yard Sports, I will also be heading up full swing for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So it's a pretty exciting project that we're working on right now. We are looking for a showroom where we're going to have a state-of-the-art facility so people can come in and check it all out. And yeah, basically what's going to happen is I'm going to be ridiculously busy, but it's going to be one hell of a ride. But it does segue really nicely into this particular topic anyway, because how the hell did I reach this far? Thank you, Trottie. I mean,
and
now let me just get into this podcast.
Now he's chirpy. Now he's chirpy. Let's hear it.
Listen, there is a lot that we have to unfold in that introduction. So, welcome, Turkey Teeth. Lovely to see those things still hanging off your face. They look beautiful for those of you watching on YouTube. I love the way that Bubsy says that 3 of us made it as golfers. I'm not sure if any of us
2 of you
made it. Well, even that's generous. It depends what you classify as a professional. So before we go absolutely ripping Daryl for being the poorest golfer of the 3 of us, I just want to say on a serious note, mate, congratulations. I know that that's been massive and it's huge. And just to reiterate so people understand, basically the full swing simulators, the kit, the launch monitor and everything, Daryl is going to be heading up a group of guys that are going to be getting that thing sold over here in Europe, Middle East, Asia and Africa. Is that correct? Asia as well or just Africa?
No, Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So we got a pretty big region there to cover. Obviously, a lot of our efforts will be quite focused on the UK and Europe initially as we start to get into the conversation against some of our key competitors. But ultimately, yeah, I nearly swore then again, but
go for it.
We're going to do some good stuff, and I'm excited about it.
I like the fact that I've been on dry January and I'm struggling to get back into alcohol now, so I'll probably stay off it for a while, all in a hope actually to improve my golf game. But the fact that you sound a little dusty is, I mean, you're taking the mantle here as the biggest alcoholic on the podcast. So what was your celebratory drink of choice last night?
Well, I was out with Dodders and Jace last night in London and took them to the Brewdog bar, gave them the story about where Rocket Yard came from, which obviously is connected to Brewdog. So we had a couple of Hazy Janes, a couple of, I think there was a couple of Wingmen on the go. So there was a few of them. A couple of punk IPAs, and yeah, we kind of went around a few different locations. I had a really interesting IPA yesterday called Dennis IPA, which was quite a random name, I thought. Pretty shitty bottle, actually, but it tasted pretty good. And we were in a really swanky bar or hotel, which is where the boys were staying because they're really swanky. And it was across the river from where the BAFTA Awards were last night. So BAFTAs is pretty much the British version of the Oscars. So there were a couple of celebs out. I wouldn't say there were heaps and heaps. I was keeping my eye open for Pamela Anderson because she was out last night. But unfortunately, I didn't get to see her. But other than that, yeah, it was a pretty good night.
You've perked up a bit because I was on a Zoom call about an hour ago with someone from Daryl's office, and in the background, he was lay back on his chair with his feet on the desk, looking like he was about to pass out. So you perked up a little bit, mate.
Yeah. I'm getting there. The brew in my hand right now is getting me back to some sort of level of humanity. So I've come from the pits of the earth, and I'm slowly getting back to some sort of surface level. Yeah.
If Pamela Anderson 2025 is perking your interest, then I'm not really sure if it's the right sort of
I'm
celebrity.
still into it. I'm still into it. You know, I don't know what it is. I just can't quite let go.
I'm
Yeah.
thinking if you actually put two Daryls next to each other, people might instantly think Pamela Anderson.
Stick your teeth
Maybe.
on top of them, then they might.
We got to mop it up as a photo, I think.
Yeah.
Well, we're a freaking long way off of what makes you a good golfer, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, so I want to dive into this because I think this is a really interesting topic because I don't think this gets spoken about enough. Like we all hear about the new swing style that's on Instagram, or what Scotty's doing with his coach, or what Roy's doing with his coach, but I want to look at like the long term. Like, what do these players, and I'm grouping us with these players. You know, I think me, Trottie and Dazzler can hang out with Rory and Scotty and Tiger. So what have we done over 10, 15, 20 years that have really helped us keep progressing? Because it's not just working on your takeaway. It's not just working on your grip. There's a lot more that goes into it. So the first question I want to start off with for you two is, when you started, did you just play as much as you could? Or was it more like, I want to be really good at this game, I'm going to go to the range and work on my golf swing?
So for me, I had a good journey in golf as a kid. Basically, I played every sport going until about 13, 14. Continued to play football, soccer in the UK, in the US. Continued to play football, but really casually. Like that one became casual, but I was decent, good sportsman. Played like a couple of years up in most sports I played, and basically had an experience on a cricket pitch in the UK. Club team I was at had 2 or 3 really good players. One of them, a girl who went on to play for England, which back then girls playing cricket was rare. She might even have captained England. She was really good. And basically, we went to like we won in the region, then went to an English kind of final thing. I was the weakest player, and I was useful, and I was the weakest player. And someone came up to me and sort of gave me a bit of a confidence boost with the bat, and I didn't score very many runs. Then I dropped a catch, and I sort of went home. And my dad didn't like cricket at all, so there was no interest in that. He wasn't watching. And I went home and said, I'm done with this. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, not playing anymore. Done. He's like, okay, sure. He was never, okay, never at all. I was like, right. He's like, fine. Didn't even say, like, what more do you want to do? Like nowadays, you get your kids, like, what do you want to do? Then you can't just drop a sport. He didn't care. He's like, yeah, no worries. And I had all the tennis stuff, and I was playing a bit of that, and realized people were really good at that, and I wasn't quite as good. So I was like, yeah, I'm all right at that. And then pretty much started playing more golf. But to fast forward this journey, the golf clubs in the UK, and you'll remember this, Bubsy, they had like crappy old pool tables in a junior room, or they had a table tennis table if you were lucky. And I started up in a lesser golf course towards a town called Chester. And then I progressed into courses on the Wirral. And eventually I got at Hoylake where the Open was played. My dad didn't get in. I got in because I was a good player. But prior to that, the kids were going to play table tennis, or the kids were going to play pool or snooker or whatever. I wasn't asked about being good at them. So every time they went to do that, I'd go and hit balls. And what made me want to get better was the assistant pro had a tightless bag that he would put his old, I guess it was Bellatas back then, in, or professionals in. He'd go and hit, and then he'd pick up the grouping. And I remember, I had a practice ball bag of balls, and I'd go and pick up the grouping, and it would take me a while because they'd be scattered. So it was probably the early part of probably why I like data. So you'd be like, wow, that was wide. And obviously you used to take the practice ball bag in your left hand, or you'd put it over your shoulder, and then you'd flick over your shoulder in the bag, flick over your shoulder in the bag, or you'd have the practice ball bag low, flick, get the ball in the bag. And I was like, that took me a while. So really I wanted to see how tight I could get the golf shots, and I wanted to get better at picking the balls up. And I was obsessed with getting wear marks in the middle of a set of blades, basically. Obsessed, because I loved Faldo. So I'd go out and do all this, and even in the Chester days, the range at that place was 3 old holes, and you could play the 3 holes. So I'd go to 100 yards and start out trying to not miss the green with like 80 balls from 100 yards. Then I'd play the par 3 up the hill that was like 140. I don't want to miss the green from 140. But I mean, it was big targets. It wasn't aim small, miss small. And then I got a net at home, and I would go out and practice in the net. But again, it was, and then Dad put a security light on the side of the house so I could see into the net. And then I'd stay up till 10, and I became obsessed. But it was, and then I had wiffle balls that I'd put sellotape round and hit them round the house and create holes around the house. So Bryson doing all the stuff he does now, we didn't live in as nice a house as Bryson, but I was kind of fizzing wiffle balls over the house and carrying around like a little bit of carpet that I could hit off. But basically, I didn't have a camera, and I knew my swing was off, didn't really care. There was a kid that I wanted to play golf with, but was intimidated by him. He was one of the best players in the country. Eventually got to hang out with him. Eventually, he became one of my best sort of childhood mates. And I eventually got in all the teams. And I think at that point, I may as well continue now, but then I was in every big tournament in the UK, and Dad wanted me to get a qualification. I might have told this story before on the podcast. So I went down to the Belfry, which is where I met you guys, and pulled out of all these big tournaments. And that is where then, and this is really important, my journey with technique and my obsession to want to get better changed. And I had quite an unorthodox golf swing. And Bubsy, I know you've said this before, everything was about my short game. And I basically became more connected with the first launch monitors that were going there, wanted more understanding of the golf swing, wanted to be able to communicate things, wanted to be able to fix my own golf swing during a round if I was hitting it left or hitting it right. I just became obsessed with the golf swing and the methods around getting better, wanted to learn more about psychology, won in the region, loosely got a low-end Challenge Tour card, but was very obsessive about technique. Went to TaylorMade, quit for 10 years, came back to the game, and now I would say I know more than ever before, and I am a shadow of my former self as a golfer. And I'm in a very interesting part. I've been thinking about it recently. I think I'm a bit like where Lee Westwood was when he was at his peak, and then he disappeared. And I think golfers in their journey, their timeline, when you become good, you are addicted now to social media golf swings. You're addicted to launch monitors. And you basically, as people saying to me a lot, you're in the rabbit hole. And I've gone so far in the rabbit hole of vertical swing playing on chipping, angle of attack on chipping, controlling yardages with length of backswing, obsession over launch monitors, obsessions over SkyCaddy devices, obsessions over data. I can tell you anything about my golf swing and my golf game and my faults, but it's come down to too far into the rabbit hole, and there has to be an element of feel. And I think if you're playing your absolute best for my generation, there's an element of feel. And the more you can watch guys from your own generation, like Freddie Couples, obviously older than me, but who I would watch as a kid, Faldo, Norman, Seve, and get an understanding of those icons and feel and get back to that, because that's what is the artist. And kids today, their journey to the top. So the way I'm going to answer this, and it's been long-winded, but is that if you're a junior today, you can leverage a launch monitor to make you a great player. If you're our age, I do think a lot of it needs to come from finding the secrets in the dirt. And someone I was texting with last night was a great player, had a Corn Ferry card and a card down in Latin America. You have to trust your instinct. So if you've got a lie and it's dormant grass, Bermuda out here, and you know you've got to get ball first on that, but you've just gone and had a great experience with a coach that wants you shallow, so you're trying to set the shaft angles and play the bounce. If you don't hit ball first and have a steep angle of attack and a steep VSP on that chip shot and gouge that thing out, you will be playing it again from a yard in front of you. I don't care how little shaft lean you have or whatever. It's just the way it's going to be. You either bunker shot that thing out of the wet Bermuda or you play it ball first. And instinct as a kid knows to do that. Instinct as a teacher wants to please the camera. And as soon as you start pleasing the camera, you lose your ability to be a player. And that's my long-winded answer, that cameras are great, launch monitors are great. Please the fucking golf ball and you'll be a good player, not the camera.
There is, I mean, so much of what you said there I want to dive into and pull out a little bit more info. But before we do that, Dazzler, what's your kind of story? Like, when you started, were you like Trotty? Were you obsessed with your swing, or were you more of a get me on the course, I just want to play?
Yeah, I played when I was a junior golfer. I grew up in South Africa, and the environment's quite different. So I only played golf once a week, really, from the age of 14. I just played golf once a week and then maybe hit golf balls once a week on average at a driving range. But things like coaching and that sort of infrastructure that's been in place here in the UK was just non existent in South Africa, like literally not even on the radar. I remember my dad taking me for a lesson at some point, but the reality was, I mean, he was standing there with a pint glass in his hand, so I don't think he was that qualified.
Should we
But
see him into the top 10? Give him a call. What
yeah,
play was
give
it?
him a shout out. Yeah. But so I never really got obsessed with the game really until I probably moved to the UK. And then when I started to really meet you guys, that was when I started to play a lot more golf and play golf every day. And then I could actually see my game really improving at a much quicker rate because I was playing golf every day. And all of you guys are better players than me. So I was able to pick up and learn different things from you guys and how you guys practiced and what you guys thought of your own golf swings and try to apply as much of that as I could to my own situation. But I would say for me, I was pretty late coming into the game to start getting to a level that was getting reasonably good. Yeah, you're talking like 18 years old, 19 years old. I really started to get into it. So definitely very late.
I've played a lot of golf with you and hung around with you a lot during those years. You had some integral flaws in the foundations of your golf swing.
Still there now.
Yeah. And as a result, though, didn't have distance. And I think what happened was with you didn't spend enough time working on the flaws. And because you were learning the golf swing and the teachings and things around it, you went 3 or 4 levels beyond where you needed to be to learn to achieve what you've achieved. So you had to do it. But as a result, you didn't have the true understanding of divot and club face. And like my first coach, I still see him every now and again. He coached Sevy for a bit, Tommy Fleetwood, Jamie Donaldson. I spoke to him on the phone the other day, and he's a Yorkshireman, and he was playing golf with my old man back on the Wirral. And he's like, you've got to strike it and you've got to flight it. They're the two things. He said, he says, and Trotsky, I listened to myself, and if I was having a lesson off myself, what would I tell myself? You've got to strike it and you've got to flight it. And that's all that fucking matters, is what he says, right? And the amount of times I pine for an old school lesson, pine for it. And I go and see all these different people, and they get the V1 out, and they bollocks. There comes a point when the chips are down, you need to strike it and you need to flight it. And foundation-wise, you never had that. And I remember we went to play Turnberry, and it was when, at this point, movable weights were out in golf clubs and tech was just flying. And you'd have like a really weird weight configuration, and you'd have really weird tipping and really weird grips. And I'm just looking at it. And to be fair, mate, I still remember it today. So hopefully you do. We were in a crosswind at the range at Turnberry, and you were hitting balls next to there was a brick wall. It was the first bay in on the left, and you were hitting driver. And I was being me, and I was being serious, but I was getting like angry with you about pace and swing and speed, and you were striking it for the first time. And because we were against this brick wall, the sound of the strike in the acoustic was emphasized. And basically I was like, that is a hit. That is the first time in the time I've known you, that is a hit. And like, stop doing all the rest of this wafty shit and fucking hit it. And that's a hit. And it's like, you had it for about 6 shots. And I'm like, there you go. You got it.
I peaked. Yeah.
Some people never have it.
Well, yeah. I mean, I do think going back when I started golf, everyone was all about accuracy. And in hindsight, I think that was probably the worst advice I could have got at that stage. And I'm not saying it should have all been about speed, but I certainly think speed was never in the conversation in those sort of early years. So I never really built like you said, a foundation that could apply a reasonable amount of speed to the strike. So I was always a golfer. When I played well, I was way too reliant on my short game. And don't get me wrong, my short game could be good at times, but if I had a bad day with a short game, then the fucking scorecard would just be blown up, and that would be the problem. I had no real safety net because I would never be close enough to the pins because I was always hitting from too far out.
But this is our generation, and speed wasn't what it is today. And
Yeah.
well, I mean, I'm evidence of it. I got on the fringes of tour with okay speed, but not great. But it's an interesting point because nowadays, today, you need speed. I mean, even Jordan Speed, Fitzpatrick, top end players, is decent speed. You know, they're past us, but not Bubs. They're past you and me. But well, you by a
long way
freaking
past
mile,
me.
and me by a decent amount. Well, me by a decent amount now. But as you come back and you play club golf, like I've started kicking around a tiny bit with this bloke who's 72 or 3 years old, and you watch him play. Phenomenal. This guy was Jack Nicklaus's club builder back in the day. Clay Long. He's a golf through and through, and I would far rather ask him his input than many teachers out there today, because his input is based on strike it and flight it. And if you strike it and you flight it, you can play. Which does bring me, to be fair, to the biggest underachiever of the three of us. And the truth is, Bubbles, like, very few people have the ability to hit a driver the way you hit a driver.
Oh, so good. Yeah.
The simple fact that you didn't do more with golf is, I got to be honest, mate, is pretty disgusting. I got to be honest.
So I want to dive into a little bit. I'll maybe touch on that a little bit, but I want to dive into
You're
something.
freaking damn right you'll touch on it, because we've never covered this. And it's like, I want to know, like, what the frick is wrong with you?
In there, innit? But we'll come on to that. But something you've both said, which I think is really important. I think it's something that I always speak to my students about, and I stress it because I think it's incredibly important. I think it's the one thing that holds the majority of golfers back from being the best version of themselves. And I think it's not really that well understood. And what that is, exactly what Trottie was saying, to play good golf, you've got to have a certain set of skills. Now, getting the takeaway right isn't a skill, right? Having shoulder tilt isn't a skill. The skills in golf are controlling the club face relative to the path, which is going to control the curve. Controlling the strike, where does the club land? Speed is a skill. And I think what I did as a junior was I played a lot of golf, which meant that I was always hitting different shots. But me and the guys I played with used to absolutely just piss around. Right. And I mean, like, we'd go and practice and we'd hit some shots, and then we'd be taking a 7-iron and we'd be seeing who can hit the biggest hook with a 7-iron, who can hit the biggest slice with a 7-iron, who can drill a 7-iron at their ball picker. And then we'd go on the chipping green and it'd be nearest the pin, but we'd go up against the bench and behind the bush and all these weird and wonderful situations. And whilst we felt we were having fun, we were developing skills, right? Those skills that help you create the right launch angle, those skills that help you create the right curve on the golf ball, and those skills that help you basically control the whole ball flight. And I think when you look at some of the top players these days, and I'll use Tiger as an example, obviously he's out there as being the best of the best, but if you ask him what he does to hit a draw or a fade, he'll talk about what his hands are doing. It's all skill based. And then when you get a golfer who's kind of later to the game, maybe they're in their 30s and they say, I want to take up the game of golf, they kind of want to be like, build me the perfect swing, show me how to hit a draw. And it's like, you've got to develop the skills. And I think as golfers, we need to be doing things in practice which develop the key skills, as opposed to obsessing over where is the takeaway, where is the delivery, what is my path. Because if you can develop the skills, you can hit any type of shot. And I guarantee you, if I took Trottie and I took Daryl and I took you a 7-iron and got you to set up over the golf ball in your normal setup, and took that golf ball and moved it 2 inches further forward and an inch further away from you, you'd strike it and you'd hit it on the green. Now, you wouldn't know how you do it, but you've got a golf swing which you understand. You understand how to move the club through space. You understand golf is about getting the club to strike the ball in a functional way that'll make the ball go on the green. If that ball is not in its normal place, working on takeaway, top of the backswing, club face ain't going to help. And I think so many golfers think if you give me the right golf swing, I will be a good golfer. And I don't think that's the case. I always say, my analogy, sorry, Trotty, just to finish, my analogy is think of Formula One, right? The car is like your golf swing. If you give me the fastest car, which is technically the best golf swing, and stick me on the front of the grid, where am I finishing? Dead last. Because I don't have the skills to drive that car. Now, you give someone like Lewis Hamilton the slowest car, and you put him in the back of the grid, and he'll beat me. You give Tiger a technically awful golf swing, and he'll still beat most people because he's got the skills and he's got the awareness to create impact to get the ball to go where it's got to get. That's golf.
I think it's so much as well, like having spent the last year and a bit really diving deep into the golf swing. I think so much is on setup and how you stand to the golf ball and knowing your ailments and knowing like your hips if they're tight and whatever. But it's all setup. And like, again, when I look at this old boy that I've been kicking around and watching, he stands over a putter, everything looks good. Stands over a chip, everything looks good. Stands over a drive, got this beautiful rotation. No speed, but the rotation is good. The window is the same every time. I look at me and like, I'm really starting to hammer down now on, well, how am I actually standing to it? Because I went all the way to Arizona for a short game lesson and I'm freaking behind it, loads of shoulder tilt. I'm like, I've always had that a bit, but it's too much. And that's why you're bottoming out early. It's not, the answers are very easy. And I think with launch monitors and with all these tools and stuff, I had a pitch shot yesterday from 80 yards under a tree with I had to hit a pitching wedge and hook it. I haven't hit that shot on the range. How do I know how far 80 yards of the pitching wedge under a tree with a hook's going to go? Well, guess what? That's what Bubsy's saying here. I'd have known that freaking 20 years ago. Hit the shot, get it on the front edge, just miss the putt, no worries, walk off, make par, is what it is. And I'm like, it's set up. All of this is set up. And I hear myself coaching my son. All we talk about is set up, set up, set up. And it's that ball position and the distance from the ball and how you hold your posture. If you start to get more rounded and hunched and down and ball back and shut, you're dead. You're dead. Which is why your lie angles are crucial. Your grip thickness is crucial. The weights in the head are crucial, which are coming back to you, Daryl. When you start messing around with that, it's all cause and effect. When all you have to do is strike it and flight it. That's it.
Yeah, my clubs, I've ended up going back to pretty neutral, to be fair, across all settings. So it's
You should
pretty
always
much
have been there.
Yeah, probably, but I wasn't, was I? That's why I made bogeys. But I do think with the swing and the dynamics of the swing, yeah, I think there are some principles there, but you only have to look at the PGA Tour and all these tours around the world to realize that these guys are capable of shooting 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 under par with what looks like very dysfunctional golf swings. So I think, again, supporting Bubs' view here, they've just found a way with that golf swing that doesn't look particularly orthodox, but they've understood that space and time scenario to be able to strike it and flight it, using your words there, Trotty, to hit a golf shot in a repeatable manner. Like that's definitely a skill. And I think that those skills are largely developed by creative play, right? So I remember when we were all at the Belfry, we would play around the short game area, play 2-1 -1. I've got lots of good memories about that. We used to play that for hours and hours and hours. And, at the time, I was a rubbish bunker player, but I know because of that, I think the bunker shot is...
Tell the story. Tell the story.
Here we go now. Yeah. So basically, 2-1. I'm going to tell you how 2-1 -1 works first.
And five, you get 5 for a hole.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you hole out, so everyone's got 2 balls each. And the shot, whoever's ball is nearest the hole once everybody's hit gets 2 points. Second nearest gets 1 point, and whoever's furthest away gets -1. If you miss the green because you've duffed a chip or you've knifed it, whatever, that's an automatic -1 anyway as well. And if you hold the chip,
5.
I was getting there. If you hold it, you get 5 points. So
first to 10. First to 10.
First to 10. All right, Trot, you want to tell the story? You sound pretty
Go
keen to
on.
tell the story.
It's just
Go on.
Yeah, he's going to change the story now and exaggerate it in a minute. But anyway, this one particular day, I kept getting ahead of Trotty with with a couple of points to go for the win. And if you win, so if your ball is the closest, you get to choose the next shot. So in this particular instance, Trotty then hit a shot closer than me, so he gets to choose the next shot. And all he did was just go back into the bunker because he knew I was crap out of the bunker. And it meant then that I lost every game after that because I couldn't get out of the bunker and get it close enough. And that was all to do with, what was that for, Trotty? Was it cleaning the toilets, doing dinner that night? It was all
Some
stupid
horrific
bets like
task.
that. Some
Yeah.
horrific task, which obviously I had to do because I kept losing. But having said that, through that experience, I'm pretty damn good out of bunkers now, and still am. I don't even have to practice a bunker shot, and I'm still good now.
There you go. So I think with short game, I mean, like short game's always been my weakness, right? It's never been the strength of my game. But going back to kind of what I feel like I did, which helped me get to a decent level, like if someone comes to see me for a lesson, right, and they say, "How do I hit a 20-yard pitch over a bunker with spin?" Let's say, I can show them how to play it. I can probably coach them to play it. So they walk away learning or having learned how to play that shot, right? But as a kid, what I would do is I would find situations around the chipping green that were, let's say, difficult. So let's say it was this 20-yard shot over a bunker, and I would not leave until I could hit it. And at the start, I couldn't hit it. So I'd be like, okay, well, what about if I open the face? Oh, well, that makes the launch angle go higher, but it doesn't really add spin. What about if I put my weight left? What about if I do this? What about if I do that? So I would end up teaching myself how to play that shot. But in the process, I've learned so much more about, okay, well, when I open the face, it does this. And when I put the ball back, it does this. And when I put my weight here, it does this. And when I lower the handle, it does this. So I still get to that end goal, but I've got a lot more information that I can tap into at a later stage around my short game. And if there's one thing I could stress to people listening to this, it's just like, be a kid again. Go and have fun with the game because you are learning so much. And then if you start to introduce what Daryl just said, which is basically creating pressure and gamifying, that's the word, gamifying practice, then you're on to a winner. Because that's the other thing that I've put down here is that when I've practiced, especially short game, it was always competitive. Always.
As a query to you then, Bubs, like you obviously hit the ball a long way. One of my memories of you actually, which is one not long after we met, we were playing on the Brabazon course, and hole 15, the par 5, is about 570 or 580 yards long, roughly. And I remember I hit driver down the middle, you hit driver down the middle. For your second shot on the par 5, you hit an 8-iron over the green. I hit a 3-wood and slid a 9-iron into the freaking green. And granted, I'm not very long, but I was like, oh my God, how does this guy hit the ball that far? Were you a big hitter straight out the gate naturally? Like, how have you managed to acquire so much speed?
I mean, knowing what I know now, I can look at my golf swing and I can tell you what I've done to create speed. But obviously, back when I was a junior, there were no launch monitors. There was nothing other than the fact of where you were hitting your second shot from. And when I joined the first golf club that I joined, I was pretty high handicap. I think 28 was the first handicap. But it became pretty apparent that there was no one at the golf club who could hit it further than me. So
Right.
probably within about 18 months of starting the game, I was like, this is like, and people kept asking me about it. And it was like, how do you do it? And it became like fun for me just to like see how many of the holes I could drive. And you think of like speed training now, I was kind of doing that. But in my own way, I was like, right, I've got to be able to try and drive the 16th. I think the 16th was like 325 uphill. So that was my little goal to myself, is can I drive that green? So every time I got to the 16th, I was just giving it like 110%. And then when we started to get launch monitors introduced, I'm very much more, if you gamify it, that makes it more fun for me. So as soon as I could see a ball speed number, I was like, right, I'm hooked now because I want to try and get it 5 miles an hour quicker. So I got to the point where I think my highest ball speed record was like 206 miles an hour. And I never did any golf swing work to do that. That was literally just every time I can get hit balls, I'm going to try and hit harder and harder and harder. And there was no technical stuff. So I can look at my golf swing now and tell you. But going back to these
How
pros.
quick are you now, cruising? If you're cruising now, how quick? 75?
I'm like 172, 173, and then if I get up there, I can get like mid 180s. But I'm like, I'm like the pros now, because if you get like a Dustin Johnson, who back in 10 years ago was like the guy who hit it miles, and like every interview with Dustin was like, oh, how do you hit it miles? He hasn't got a clue. And I was like that. If you'd asked me when I was like 19, 20, Jesus, like, you're the longest hitter at the club, tell us what you do, I haven't got a clue. And I think that's the message, that many of these players who are great, they figure out a way to get there, but they don't know how they do it, because they're doing it in such a way. Either it's through practice, either it's through gamifying it, like we said, or it's just experimenting. They just figure out a way, and then they fine tune that. And then, yes, they might do a little bit of swing work late down the line to tidy up a few things, but it's never the swing work that gets them there. It's always the development of skills that is the leader in that.
Scotty Scheffler said, didn't he, after last week, he didn't drive it very well, and this was after the Phoenix tournament, and basically his swing was off, going to work on that, but then still comes out and maintains a level for the Torrey Pines event and gets in and around the leaderboard. And I just think that's a testament to short game and just grit and grind. And to your point, I don't think, like, swing is great, launch monitors are great, all the data is great. You got to use it the right way, 100%. Like, I tend to use my clip data to help me pick your targets, basically. Knowing where I miss will make me aim slightly differently. So, but it hurts your confidence as well as it helps your confidence. I mean, to keep seeing poor short game numbers freaking kills it, which is why you've got to manage the information coming in. And if you're not managing it and setting the expectations and doing the right things to make it better, then you end up in the spiral that I'm in, which is just not playing great golf compared to what you can play.
But I think people are quite different, really. You look at the tour players. Some guys will be really, really data heavy. Some guys don't even want to know the data.
Yeah.
They actively avoid their data from the golf course because they prefer to rely on what they feel and sense and what they feel that they're naturally good at. But I tell you what is common, though, is that all of them would use a launch monitor, especially when it comes to equipment changes, and especially if they are looking to change something in their swing. But it's a bit like TaylorMade days, Martin Keimer and those guys, when I was first coming out onto the tour, they would make all of these changes in the beginning of the season, and then you really wouldn't see them for the rest of the year because they were dialed in. They didn't mess around. They didn't go too deep into the data. But I do see that. I believe, though, that they were always very self-aware about what data that is likely to come out, because I think they're that dialed into their game. But these are also guys that play golf every day and they do it for a living. Not like your amateur golfer that maybe plays golf once a week or even twice a week, maybe barely even practices. How are those guys going to get better at golf? Yes, you look at someone like Tyrrell Hatton, he's a great example, hates practicing. He just wants to go and play golf all the time. So for him, it's great. Yeah, so his way to get better, or certainly to maintain the standard that he has, is play more golf, not hit more balls. I was I'm trying to think where I was. One of these, I think I was in Newcastle, and Poulter was at the table and Hatton was at the table, and they were talking about it. And Poulter was asking him the question about how often do you practice? And he says, well, if I didn't have to practice, that's what I would do. And then Poulter said, I can't think of anything better than, chucking down 600 balls, and that's my session for the day. And I feel like I've got a lot done. So those two guys both had great careers thus far, two totally different approaches to the game.
Yeah, I think you'd find that across the board. There'd be a lot of different approaches. I've made some notes here as well about what I felt I did as a kid. And one of the things I think looking back I did is I never, ever tried to play the game perfectly. And Trottie was mentioning a minute ago about practice. We had a similar situation at the golf course I was, where there was no practice area. So there was a little area to the side of the 18th where we could go and hit balls. So it was a case of, like Trottie said, you had a little shag bag with some balls, and I would go and stick a brolly in the middle of the 18th fairway and go and hit balls. And I would do this before like a Muncie Medal or a Stableford. And I'd hit, like, typically I'd hit 7 irons, this brolly, and I'd get up there and I'd be just going, like, most of these balls are left of that brolly as I'm picking them up. So I'd go and play that Stableford, aiming 15 yards right at the flag. I was never obsessed with playing the correct game of golf where I've got to aim at every flag. And then the next time I do it, I'll be like, right, these are all right at the brolly. I'm going to go and aim left of the flag. And I was very much on the course. I was like, probably not quite as much as you two, because I feel like you were stronger than this and me. But I was like determined to get the best score out of that round of golf, as opposed to, can I make the right golf swing today?
But with all your talent, though, because I would say that you are very talented, and the ball strike is good, and you got the benefit of distance as well. Like, what do you, in your game, just from an honesty perspective, like, what do you think held you back from really breaking through as a mainstream golfer?
A couple of things, really. I think I looking back, I didn't work hard enough on my game. And when I say work hard enough, when I tried to play a little bit more and see how good I could get, in terms of hours committed, I'm look back and I go, I'm happy with that. But I didn't properly work on my game. I just went and did what I kind of wanted to do. So I didn't really sort of grind it. I didn't really put the hard hours in. I'd go and hit a few balls when I got bored again, play. And I kind of I'd walk away going, yeah, I've done like 7 hours today. But I'm like, really looking back, I'm like, didn't really do the right thing in those 7 hours. I don't think I really put the right work in at the right time. Short game was always my weakness. And when I played for a couple of seasons, like driving stats, when I was keeping, they were decent. Fairways, greens in reg was decent. I genuinely don't think I had a tournament round of golf with less than 30 putts.
Wow.
And, the next week when I didn't have a tournament and I went to the golf course for 7 hours, how much did I spend on the putting green? Half hour. So, that was me looking back and saying, because I love the game, I just wanted to go and do what I want to do. I love playing, I love hitting balls, I just go and do that. So
yeah, it's funny actually. One of my favorite stories of Trottie actually talking putting practice was on that Belfry putting green, and I remember walking from the starters hut, which is from one end of the actual building, and I'm walking towards the green, and I can see Trottie's he's doing the the 2 foot putt that you got to hold 100 putts in a row,
yeah.
And he's clearly missed a putt. And as I'm walking, I've just seen his putter fly about 50 feet in the air. And I'm like, oh my God, Trotmeister, right in the middle of the Belfry practice screen. It was quite an entertaining watch back in the day, that's for sure.
Do you know what gets me? What gets me though, listening to Chris speak there, is that I worked hard enough. I worked freaking hard, and I just wasn't talented enough. I couldn't drive a golf ball in the fairway enough times. That was weak for me. Short game was mustard. Putting was mint. Grinding was mint. So many times I'd get a good score out of a bad day's golf. But I just wasn't good enough to shoot 65, 64, 63 enough. I've broken 65, but once, twice maybe. I've broken 70 enough times on easy golf courses. But you start to get to tournament courses, and I just wasn't good enough. And, I watch someone like Chris hit a golf ball, and I'd be like, man, if I could hit driver like that, or if I could strike long irons like that, because I'd outwork anybody, not bothered about that. And still to this day, I'm like that. I don't think I have mountains of talent, but I'll outwork anybody. And that's obviously my strength. And you look back and I think I could have gone longer. I think I walked away a little early. And I think that's because obviously I had a great opportunity to go and work for TaylorMade, which I loved. And the path then was the path. It is what it is. But definitely still at times I still sit here and go, maybe walked away a little early. But truth is, maybe wasn't good enough either,
One of the things that I really remember at you, Trotty, is we would play PGA Midland region events, and it probably didn't happen as often as it feels like it did in my memory. But I remember finishing before you, and then you'd walk off the course, and I'd be like, "How'd you go on?" And you'd say something. It was always felt like it was the same thing. It was something like 69. I had to up and down it from the ball washers for that. That was
Basically. I was good short game, to be fair. I was really good, which is why it's amazing. I look at my clip data now and I'm like, how did this happen? And it's that's why I'm, I was literally, I say, guys, I've started playing golf again and I'm getting beaten by people that are miles away. Like, no, I've never been good at golf. And I'm just like, okay, there's an element of what I've done. I have to hold my hand up and be like, okay, this is my fault. I've gone too far down the rabbit hole in a lot of areas. And I got to stop and realize that you either quit again or you fix it. And, you know, I'm going to take option 2, but it's got to come from divots, ball flight, strike it and flight it. It's got it.
I think I'll be, I've played, as you said earlier, Troy, I played a lot of golf with you. And I really, every time I walk away from the golf course, I go, God, that ball flight that he gets looks real good. I remember you not long after you probably started at TaylorMade all those years ago, and you were hitting driver on the golf course, and that flight just didn't look the same as everyone else. It was just a straight flight to the peak of its flight at the top, and then it just dropped down perfectly into the middle of the fairway. And I always think that you've got a really good ball flight. That's my impression of your game.
You know, the problem, and it happened to me at the photo shoot with TaylorMade, I've got some content coming out. Tommy Fleetwood fit me for a driver, right, at the last photo shoot. It's going to come out on YouTube this week. I hadn't hit a ball all day. I grabbed driver. I'm going to hit this thing in front of Tommy. No worries. The problem is how good Tommy Fleetwood is, how good Rory is, how good Dustin is, how good Tiger is, Colin, Scotty. Like, yeah, I can hit a golf ball, but mate, there are millions of people
I get that.
who can hit a golf ball like I hit a golf ball. Bubsy hits a golf ball better than me, 100%. Now, in our heyday, to be fair, I don't know if I'm pushing it here, but probably didn't achieve anything like what I achieved with the shite I had, but could have gone way further. And you then look at like a Lowry, a Fitzpatrick, all these boys, Hatton, they're up again. And it's a higher peak height, it's more speed, it's a higher launch, it's lower spin. And you're just like, it wears off on you. And I think Bubbles has said it here about expectation. You then, instead of being comfortable with carrying it 275, which is about, if there's a carry at 275, that's about my number. And I'm like, oh, I think I can get 285. You can't. And that's what impresses me about the guy I mentioned earlier, Clay Long, who's a little older now. He's happy to pop driver out there at 250, 245. And he plays that way. And if he's hitting 6-iron from 145, he's hitting 6-iron. And he's grinding this thing into the heart of the green. And I'm like, that is a mindset of a fantastic player. Like, I think it would be wrong of us not to mention a buddy of mine that I play a bit of golf with, Matt Blackie. I used to play a lot of golf with him, don't so much anymore. But poor technique, horrible technique. Played on the European Tour. Played on the European Tour for 3 or 4 years, held on to the bottom feeder card, had a nice time out there, had a great amateur career. Horrific golf swing. Horrendous. Try and get the guy to teach you. No chance. It's very simple. Oh, wait left side when you chip and, oh, you're not putting great. Don't know, really. Like, I don't know. Dean Wilson won millions playing golf, won on the PGA Tour. Ask the guy questions and he'll make it as simple as he physically can to answer you. I just make the putt. This guy's top 10 all-time strokes game putting. All time. How the hell do you read that putt? I just imagine I'm rolling the ball at the hole. Okay, how do I do that? Don't really know how I do it, so I'm not sure. And these guys are legit. And Dean said to me a few years ago, and I didn't listen to him, I'm an idiot. And again, we were playing a lot of golf together. And we were talking about something like transition in the downswing. And I get quite narrow. Well, I've always been narrow. And then I back up and then I flip. I've always backed up. I've always flipped. Started to talk to Dean about this beautiful transition, getting wide, what I want to get. And he just looked at me and he's like, you can spend 2 years doing this. And on an iPhone, you'll move it an inch. He said, in that time, you will play some horrendous golf. Be careful what you want to do. What do? I go down the avenue of moving that club 1 inch. I've probably moved it 7/8. I haven't hit a fairway since 2021. It's like, so you sometimes, and somebody said it to me again, listen, and this is just where I'm at the moment. We do this podcast in a month and I'll give you different answers. The 71-year-old, 72-year-old man says to me today, I got this chip right at the 7th at this golf course I play, Bermuda, wet, difficult chip. I put the ball, let's say I'm 8 yards away, short-sided. The next shot was 7.5 yards away, short-sided. And then I splash out of the wet Bermuda, bunker shot onto the fringe, make double bogey, move on. And he says to me, sometimes you've got to dance with the girl that you bring. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, you don't have the skills to get that ball up and down from wet Bermuda short-sided, but you had the skills to hit the flop shot from the bunker shot from the wet Bermuda. Just dance with the girl you brought and move on. You ain't making birdie. You ain't getting up and down. Don't make double, make par, or make bogey, and move on. You're always trying to do what's perfect, and what you got ain't bad. And then I showed him the swing on camera, and he's like, well, look at that. It looks like Hogan. And I was like, Jesus. That's the best compliment you could probably give me. And he's like, I don't know what you want me to say. You turn your hips a bit more and you hit it a bit better. Okay. Go to the range, turn my hips a bit more, hit it a bit better. You're hitting it low, not enough hip turn. Turn your hips more on the backswing, you'll hit it higher. Tom Watson, Jack Nicklaus, turn your hips in a barrel. Start turning my hips in the barrel, ball starts coming off with more speed and higher. I'm like, old school methods still work, confirmed by new school technology will save you time. If I'd have used the iPhone efficiently or the full swing kit with the video option in there efficiently, I would have seen this. How have I not seen it? Why have I wasted time? It's like, we can all be good, but you have to dance with the girl that you brought.
Oh, but I like that. I think it makes so much sense. I think that's definitely something people need to take onto the golf course. He's like, just play your game, and then if you don't like that game, the golf course is not the place to change it. So, Dazzler, I feel like we've been talking in a way that people are going to be listening to this thinking you're like a 28 handicapper. You were a PJ pro. You got to pro level. So just looking back at your kind of journey from start to finish, what do you think you could have done better? What would have been something that you could have done, do you think, which would have helped you get to an even higher level?
I think for me, just really going back to when I first started, I would have liked to have been in a golf club that had a lot of really good junior golfers that were competitive. I was in it was a great golf club, CMR Golf Club was what it was called. It was good fun, it was good banter, good chemistry. But actually, I think I would have thrived better had I been around better players earlier. Because I remember my dad telling me, I was outside in the garden chipping into flower bed, and my dad would be like, yeah, make sure you don't burn out. So that kind of got into my head a little bit. And actually, in reality, I don't think you can burn out. Like, certainly not at that age. I should have been hitting golf balls every day, all day, as much as I could. And just being around better players and just obsessing with practice a bit more, I think I would have got better. But having said that, I think being around the better players from a competitive nature would have been quite helpful for me. But I think I would have learned a better golf swing at that time as well. So by the time I did start to play a lot more golf, it was already almost too late. My golf swing was already that established. So I had to get the most out of the golf swing that I had, which I was able to do, to your point. It never looked pretty. It was never a great strike, or it was never good in that sense. But I was able to sort of scrap through several rounds of golf and, play a decent game from time to time.
How tall are you, Chris?
6 foot.
And were you always fairly tall, or were you average for kids?
I wasn't born 6 foot.
No, I get it. But at 13, were you a tall kid, or were you?
I don't remember being a tall kid, so I think I would have been fairly average.
Were the golf clubs you received just your dad's golf clubs cut down?
Well, I didn't start the game until I was about 13. So
okay, so that's a
probably went into like ladies' length, maybe. I remember the shop that bought them from, they were like 70 quid for a set of irons.
Okay, and Daryl, were the clubs you had adults clubs cut down?
Yeah.
He doesn't have adults clubs now.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So obviously Daryl and I aren't particularly tall, and I think that the errors that we have are based on adult clubs cut down.
That's fair.
Like certainly Daryl's, well, both of us. It's having a heavy club that's too long, too heavy, and then trying to manipulate this thing to. Now you start at 13 years old, and you have clubs that you can hold and manipulate. So you're swinging the club isn't swinging you.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big thing. And like I struggle with it with my son a little bit because I've just cut down some other junior clubs, gone an inch shorter than what the recommended age is. And they're long now. but he's playing golf with a buddy. The buddy's hitting it further than him. He's using a driver that's a grip length longer than his driver. But his buddy's missing the middle. And I would say to Jacob, like, you got to hit the middle. It's not about the clubs being longer, going further. Hit the middle. But of course, 11-year-old kids want to hit it a long way. I want to hit it a long way. But if you don't hit the middle, you don't hit a long way. So I think that some advice as we try and wrap this for people coming in, and lessons, things that I think certainly Daryl and I made a mistake on. Things have changed now. Time's moved on. Junior clubs, there's a lot more on the market, albeit I think it's pretty weak, but there's still a lot on the market. Do not, if you're any parents out there, get into longer, heavier golf clubs. That's what you need. You do not need them.
Can I just say on that?
Second piece of advice to add to this before you go. Alignment sticks are still one of the best tools you can have. Carry on, Bubsy.
I'm just on your point there. I bought my boys some golf clubs. They were cheap, they were short, they were the right length. They went to the range a few times, took on the golf course. They've got obviously the golf things they have when they're 3.5 years old. And then James at TaylorMade sent me an email. I was like, mate, we got some new junior TaylorMade clubs. He goes, can I send you some for the boys? I mean, genuinely, this is not a plug for TaylorMade. The difference was incredible because they were the same length, but they were just so much lighter. And honestly, next time I took them to the range, I'm like different golfers. Because like you said, they're not trying to like just drag this weight around and they can swing it. So I cannot stress the importance of that enough.
It's just happened with me with Jacob when I put him in these clubs, but then I put his swing on camera and I try never to show him. And I'm like, a couple of mistakes are in there. But pretty easy to fix because he's a kid. And all you do is you say, and he's a good sportsman, you're like, different target, still aim for that one. And rather than over the top, you then get that out to the, and you're like, okay, that's kind of fixed without going too deep down the rabbit hole. But I think long clubs leads to early extension because you're steep, because it's long, because you got to swing the club. The club's swinging you, you're not swinging the golf club.
I agree.
So there you have it. I think that's wisdom kind of putting a bow on this puppy, aren't we?
I think so. We've already had a little beer story with Dennis IPA, so I think we're all done there. But for anybody that wants to send us their beer stories, you can obviously send that through an email. But yeah, let's wrap up from here, I think. But from an email perspective, you can drop us a note at hello@dopestroke.com. And obviously you can get hold of this episode and many others on all of your favorite channels. Other than that, guys, I think that is it for today.
So before we go, Chris, you have any regrets about your golf in the past that you wish you'd changed now? Because I don't think we've maybe given you enough to cover that one about being such a great ball striker. What would you have done a little differently just before we go, if you can summarize it?
Even though you say that I hit it well, and I kind of look back, do think I hit it well, I always had, because I had some speed, I had some big misses. So I could hit 5 drivers on 5 holes and almost guarantee myself a birdie, just being that close to green. But then the next 2 holes, I could blaze it out of bounds. So I did need to be a little bit more disciplined swing wise. And I would have, looking back, I'd have sacrificed 5% of that distance for a little bit more control. And then I just needed to grind on the putting. I just didn't do enough on putting. I'd go on the putting green and I'd hit putts. There was no structure there. And no...
Stroke looks good, though. Stroke looks better than mine.
I don't want to... There's no coach, really, that I'm sort of pointing the finger at, but I don't really feel anyone really had those hard conversations with me and saying, look, you're not doing the right things here. This is what you need to do. Like, and it might not be that much fun and it might be a bit difficult, but actually, if you want to get somewhere, that might be what you have to do. I look back at everything I did and it was always fun, and I needed it to be like 15-20% of it not so fun but functional, and I don't think
what age do you think not functional and what age do you think the not fun stuff should come in?
I think certainly when I got to 18, 19 and started at the Belfry, I think I was smart enough then to go, do you know what, if this is a career, if this is, like Dazzler's incredible businessman on this call, but he's going to be, I don't know, 15-20% of his week is going to be stuff he doesn't really want to be doing. But if you want to get somewhere, if you're driven to get to that goal and it's really what you want, you've got to be doing those things. So I look at that, I'm thinking, potentially I just wasn't that driven, because I remember, reading a quote. It's like, look, if you really want something, you'll make time for it, right? When was the last time any of us missed a night's sleep? You need it, so you make time for it. So I just think, looking back, was I really driven enough? I'd love to sit here and say I was. I tried, threw everything at it, and I wasn't good enough. But I just look back and think I needed 25% of my golfing time to be less fun, more functional driven.
Yeah, I think just to echo that from sort of my closing position, really, I think a lot of amateurs out there, they only practice what they can do. They don't practice the things that they don't do or can't do. And actually, I look at how my career has developed and I'm not talking about golf, I'm just talking about the business end of it. And it's riddled with mistakes. It's riddled with missteps. But that's the way that you get better, is by challenging yourself, and you make a lot of mistakes. And I actually think that amateurs can learn a lot from that gamification stuff. We mentioned 2-1 -1 and the games that we used to play on the golf course. All of these things is a way to enhance or at least experience difficult things and difficult positions that you wouldn't otherwise do on your own. So I echo that completely, where I think people should spend a lot more time, like you said, 10, 15, even 20, 25% of the time working on the things that they can't do, not the things they already do.
And how's this? The game doesn't lie. If you're shit at a section of the game, it's because you're shit at it. No, Daryl.
No, I know, it's just funny.
There's no team to hide behind in this. This is the real deal. This game's the best game for that reason. If you can't do something, it's because you ain't put the time in, and that's why you suck.
Exactly.
And
it's something on the radio earlier. They were talking about football, and they were saying, if you're a football team and you can't score enough goals, you're going to spend £100 million. You can bring in the best striker. If you're a golfer and you can't chip, you cannot spend £100 million and buy a chipping game. You've got to grind it out and get it.
Whatever you are working on ain't working. So I don't care if it's come from flipping the Queen of Sheba. It ain't working. Change it.
I think that's a great way to end the podcast today.
Who would have thought we'd end on the Queen of Sheba?
Yeah. All right, brilliant. Well, thanks guys for listening. I hope that's been interesting to a whole bunch of people out there. And like I said, anything you want to send us, hello@dopestroke.com is where you can find us. And check us out on Instagram as well. You'll see us there at dopestroke.show. Other than that, guys, we look forward to seeing you guys next week.